Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined by my partner in crime, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. And Wes, there is a joint practice with the Seattle Seahawks. There is the preseason finale against the Seattle Seahawks left to go. And I don't know whether to feel like, oh my gosh, the end of training camp is already here, or come on, let's go, let's get this roster selected and get on to week one. Like, I sort of feel like there's a little bit of both going on.
I'm letting the wine breathe a little bit here, Spofford. I'm excited for the end of training camp, if for only reasons then maybe we can see family members again, be able to, the old Mike Pettin thing, be able to, see sounds, smell, whatever that analogy he used many years ago. Hey, listen, this is always a very exciting time of the year because, again, we're getting close. And finally, that you can see around the bend here on the horizon of the regular season. This is a very pivotal week, though. And there are a lot of jobs that are still going to be up for grabs. Some starting positions could potentially still be up for grabs going into this game against Seattle. I've personally gotten a big kick out of the joint practices in Green Bay. We've seen them now pretty much every non-COVID year that Matt LaFleur has been the head coach.
Yeah.
Beginning, I believe, with Houston in 2019. So for the Seahawks to come in, get a flavor for their team and how everybody intermingles should be a lot of fun. And then on top of that, the fact that we're finally entering this stretch here to set the 53.
Well, whether it comes down to position battles, roster decisions, guys on the bubble, whatnot, what do you have your eye on here in these these last two sort of final auditions when you talk about the joint practice and the final preseason game?
Who wants it and how badly do you want it? You and I'm sure you could run back a bunch of unscripteds over the years where it's kind of the same sort of mentality when you enter that last preseason game is which player, which individual that's kind of on maybe the cusp or the bubble trying to make a roster spot makes a big play in the preseason finale that ultimately catapults him on the roster. I can't help but think of Aaron Mosby last year, who had a phenomenal preseason finale against the Baltimore Ravens, and that kind of catapulted him not only into being able to make the 53, but also, hey, this guy could potentially be a contributor for us on special teams. Those type of individuals, there's always one or two every year. And I'm sure Brian Gutekunst didn't speak this week, but I'm sure if he did, one of his big talking points would be that it goes right down to the wire here in terms of how you set your roster. You take all the data in, beginning when the offseason program began in April to everything you get through on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things here with the roster decisions looming next Tuesday, it'll be, is it Tuesday at 3 o'clock?
Yes, sir. Central.
3 o'clock Central time.
Because we're a worldwide show.
Tuesday at 3 o'clock Central time is when the roster decisions all need to be turned in to the league. And what I think is interesting about how this final stretch here is taking shape for the Packers is you have this mixture of the classic young guys who are on the bubble, like who might be the next Aaron Mosby. I mean, will it be, Julian Hicks at wide receiver? What's going to happen with Bo Melton? Has this position change? Has he gotten himself a spot on the 53? So you have those kinds of things going on, but at the same time, you have decisions to make on a couple of veteran players that you brought in from the outside, and I'm talking about Isaiah Simmons and Mecole Hardman, that as we've seen training camp go along, we can see that those two guys absolutely could play a big role on special teams for the Packers, but where exactly do they fit in respectively on offense and defense? Now, in Hardman's case, there's been a lot of injuries at wide receiver, and we'll see how much that has to get taken into account. In Simmons' case, he's at a spot where guys are healthy and there is quite a bit of depth. When you talk about Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, Isaiah McDuffie, Tyron Hopper, Christian Welch, all in that mix. So the decisions to me are going to be very interesting because it's not entirely clear cut exactly. I felt from the very beginning when the Packers signed Mecole Hardman and Isaiah Simmons, I thought they were very interesting veteran free agent signings. And I wasn't sure, are they going to have a spot on this team? And in some ways, I'm still not sure. And I think that speaks to the strength of the Packers roster, but also the fact that those guys have done some things in this training camp to show, hey, maybe they can help the Packers in 2025. So there's there are some interesting decisions to be made with guys like that.
Yeah, Hardman is such an interesting one, too, because he was like the veteran addition that the Packers made in free agency. And then they also ended up drafting 2 guys in the first 2 days at that position, one of whom was the first receiver the Packers have taken in 23 years in the first round.
Right.
So the competition is inherent at that receiver spot, but he offers a bunch of different things. And the punt return aspect is one thing. Obviously there's different ways that you can utilize him with his skill set. It was tough. When you go back to the Jets game, there was, as he even said, you don't even really necessarily call it a muff punt. It was like a misfielded punt. Yeah. And it led to a turnover. And he said you can't have that. But at the same time, he's been doing this for 6 years, and there's a maturity there that when you listen to him talk, and I was in that scrum that day, he isn't pressing, and I think that's such a important mentality for a punt returner to have. Keyshawn Nixon, you think Keyshawn Nixon has a long-term memory, whether it's at cornerback or kickoff return or anything like that? That dude is, as soon as that whistle blows, he's on to the next play. He could have a touchdown, could have a turnover. He's moving on. Yeah. And that is something that you have to have in this business. For Simmons, the inside linebacker competition has been one of the more fascinating that I've ever watched, because you have Simmons there who can do a lot of different things. You have Christian Welch, who is he is the tougher than a $2 steak that will just not go away. And we were talking with him about that this week, and he was asked the question by one of the reporters, like, do you ever feel pressure? And he's like, my wife asks me that occasionally. And he's like, I really don't. Because since his freshman year at Iowa, he's been a special teams guy. Played a lot of linebacker at Iowa, but he was a special teams guy from day one. And he's cut his teeth and he's earned his paychecks on special teams. This is what he offers you. If you want it, he's ready to do it for you. If he doesn't, as we saw last year, he went to Denver, he went to Baltimore. There's still been opportunities for him. And then I look at Teron Hopper, and I've talked about him numerous times now, but for as much spotlight as we've put on Cooper, collectively as a media corps, I mean, there's a certain amount of respect I think you have to give Hopper for playing the position, but in a different way at the Mike linebacker position, but also growing immensely over the past year. What Brian Gutekunst and his scouts make heads and tails of that position will be interesting, fascinating theater.
Yeah, I think so too. Is there somebody out there on the bubble? And we don't like to get into the prediction business, and that's not what we're doing here. But is there somebody out there on the proverbial roster bubble that you are really going to have your eye on here, both the joint practice on Thursday and in the final preseason game? Is there somebody kind of at the top of that list?
I hope this doesn't come off as a cop-out, because I'll name like 8 guys, but it's really the cornerback position. Yeah. You mentioned Bo. And Bo is an important one, because if he makes this roster, he's going to go down as one of the better training camp stories you and I have ever covered. Absolutely. In terms of he made that switch 2.5 months ago. Yeah. And now here he is competing for a roster spot at that. But you have Kalen King there too, the former 7th-round pick that has learned the nickel position but could still play some perimeter for you. You have Micah Robinson coming in out of Tulane that I think has put on some good film, was on the #1 kickoff coverage unit during the practices last week, which that's not something that rookies are just handed. That he's clearly earned that opportunity to be able to show out in that phase. You have Kamal Haddon, who was a former 6th-round pick. And then, by the way, you have all these safeties now, too, that you have to figure out, okay, which DBs are you keeping in this equation? You would imagine, again, I don't want to speculate, but, okay, even if Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine play, or even if, how much they play in this game against the Seahawks, all these young corners are going to have a chance to show what they have to offer. And realistically, outside of that top 3, I think it's still anybody's race. Yeah, and I think it's good that you brought up cornerback, because when you look at that group, Micah Robinson was a 7th-round draft pick this year. Kalen King was a 7th-round draft pick last year. Kamal Haddon, not by the Packers, but was a 6th-round draft pick. Was it Kansas City? Yeah. So you're talking about three guys. There probably isn't room for all 3 of them on the roster. 3 guys who are all late-round draft picks. They've been fighting Corey
this battle.
Still there too. Sorry.
Yes, Corey Ben, and then you're talking about a veteran the Packers brought back, who's been on the team, done things on special teams, helped out on defense, all of that kind of stuff as well. Haddon to me is very interesting because I'm on the live blog during games, I know the fans have kind of soured on him a little bit because he didn't play all that well in Indianapolis in the preseason game. I think it's important to remember that Kamal Haddon was injured. He missed a lot of time, got thrown back in there essentially in the joint practice and in the preseason game with Indy. He's kind of trying to get his legs back under him. He's trying to get back into the rhythm of things, and I think it'll be very interesting to see how he responds now that he has gotten back into that rhythm. He's been in practice on a daily basis again, as he fights for this roster spot right to the end. I think you and I have both been impressed with Kalen King to a certain extent. Now the Packers have worked him almost exclusively as a nickel slot cornerback. And of course, it almost goes without saying, almost all of these young cornerbacks who are fighting to make the roster, they're taking their reps on special teams as well and being evaluated in that sense. But Kalen King, a 7th-round pick last year, spends his rookie season on the practice squad. You can see he's definitely made some strides this year. Has he made enough to get that nod to get on the 53 this year when you have competition from a veteran like Ballentine and a guy like Bo Melton, who has been a pleasant surprise in terms of how quickly he has taken to the cornerback spot, and he might take one of those roster spots at that position. Not that there are specific quotas or anything, but you know what I mean. So, and a lot of things could shift here over the next few days too, as much as you kind of get a feel for, okay, maybe this is where it stands like right now, but with this joint practice and with one more preseason game to go, and obviously there can always be more injuries that get thrown into the mix as the decisions need to be made on Tuesday. There are a lot of things that could change over the next 3 to 4 days.
People were working on me in inbox asking, hey, what are your locks? What do you think about, how this roster is all shuffling out? And I'm like, well, locks can change real quick based on how these preseason games go and who's available and who's not. But, yeah, I remember talking to Kalen last year about this. Didn't get a chance to ask him about it this year, even though we talked to him near the beginning of training camp. I thought King had a really strong preseason last year, but it was the special teams element that he was trying to catch up on. And when you talked about that competition at cornerback, these are the decisions Green Bay has to weigh, where you have Bo Melton and then also Ballentine, who those two guys were your flyers last year, your number one flyers on punt coverage.
Yeah.
So, again, when you get to beyond the 40, so to speak, and you're trying to figure out who's going to fill out the 48 for game days, these are the considerations you have to take into account. In addition to the fact, dude, Mike, you and I could sit here for 2 hours. We could go over every single position. Quarterback, you have Sean Clifford and Taylor Eldridge-Ma.
Right.
Like, you have all these spots. Marshawn Lloyd's down right now. Which running back's going to step up?
Right. What are the decisions made on Tuesday at a position like running back, given Lloyd's injury, and how do they how do they make the maneuvers and whatnot to get things set where they feel they're in the best position to move forward into the regular season?
Before we move on, I was meaning to mention this earlier, and I want to say it now on the air. There is that change with the designated return option with the IR2. The Packers, it was actually available to them last year. I believe it was Jonathan Ford that they used the option on, where you no longer have to, if you have up to the option to carry up to 2 guys and put them directly on IR now with the designation to return out of the 8 you have for the season, without carrying them over 1 day on the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
Now, if you have 3 or 4 and you want to do the same option, then you got to wait. But if you only have 1 or 2, you can put them on there when you're cutting the roster to 53 without having to go through that extra. Because honestly, like we saw 2 years ago, Matt Orzik got cut, but because he was a veteran, the Packers could bring him back, and then you could kind of finagle.
Yeah. He wasn't exposed to waivers where somebody could just claim him and take him. They worked out an agreement. They said, hey, this is just a roster maneuver. We're going to cut you. We're going to re-sign you the next day, et cetera. But it is important also to for folks who like to follow all this minutia with regard to the roster, if you put either 1 or 2 guys on injured reserve with the designation to return during the regular season, they would count amongst the eight total that you're allowed to bring back from injured reserve over the course of the season, whether you put them on at the cut to 53 or after you carry them onto the 53, you have 8 guys that you can potentially bring back from IR during the regular season. So it's all part of the same pool. It's just the timing mechanism.
And then you get more if you could make the playoffs.
Right.
So
it goes up to 10 if you make the postseason.
The line I said in Insider Inbox between injured reserve and the practice squad, it's never been more flexible with a roster these days in terms of
100%.
Who's available. There could be guys that the Packers cut that they re-signed to the practice squad that ultimately are suiting up against Detroit in Week 1. You just never know.
Yeah, you don't. Well, there are a couple other topics I want to get to, but we do need to pay some bills around here. So right now, we will turn it over to a word from our sponsors. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. At Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. Pit Boss Grills, the official grill of Packers tailgating at Lambeau or at your house. Take your game day to the next level with a Pit Boss wood pellet grill. Pit Boss Grills available at Menards. Welcome back to Packers Unscripted. Wes, officially one practice left in training camp as we sit here right now, which is the joint practice against the Seahawks. So I'm just going to throw this out to you as an open-ended question for you, and you can take this any direction you want to. What has been, in your mind, the best moment or moments of training camp?
There's a few. I actually, and not to be, a victim of recency here, but I mean, the Matthew Golden touchdown was really spectacular this past week. Seeing that in practice, seeing him develop and have the downfield option to his game for as much as we've talked about the intermediate option. I think going back to, and hopefully everything's cool with the young man, but Omar Brown having all those interceptions on family night, it is become somewhat of a cliche that there's always a young defensive back that steps up and makes a bunch of plays, but that young dude had the practice of a lifetime at Lambeau Field, and I hope with the lung contusion, everything, I hope for his sake, from a football perspective, from a person perspective, very nice young dude, everything works out from him in that regard. But there was a couple days ago, I'm trying to remember all the specifics of it, but when you see a team come together the way that the Packers have come together this camp, they had a very clean practice against the Colts. Hopefully there's another clean one coming up here against the Seahawks. But this team, and I've been talking to a few people on our sideline about this group has been together for so long now, and in some ways they almost remind me kind of like a college football team, like a traditional college football team, where guys come in as freshmen and now they're in their junior year, they're in their sophomore year together, and the way that they're willing to fight with one another, the way they're willing to battle with one another. And I just felt like this training camp, it's been really long, don't get me wrong there, like I felt like it's been a month now since this thing started, but the amount of camaraderie that they've shown on the field, in the locker room, and just watching the way Bo Melton interacts with players, watching Brandon McManus dress up as a referee. I mean, this team understands the expectations this year without a shadow of a doubt. But at the same time, you can still see them having fun and enjoying the process. And when you're playing this game for 6-7 straight months, that's the type of stuff you have to do to win a championship. Yeah, and I think I do think these guys. It's a group that, we're around them a lot on the practice field, in the locker room. It's a group that genuinely gets along. I think they enjoy playing football with each other, and I know that sounds kind of quaint and whatnot, but I think it's true with this group, and I think that happens when you have the right mix of the young players with the veterans. And yes, the veterans are leaders, but they're not necessarily like the overbearing, like crack the whip type, or they're always trying to bring everybody along, not necessarily make an example of somebody. Like that's how a locker room comes together, and I think we've seen a little bit of that over the past month. Look at the Rasheed Walker thing with Anthony Belton that we talked about on Tuesday, right? Yeah. I mean, Anthony Belton had a tough first half, and little moments like that to lighten things up. Hey, have a clementine. I mean, like. That's what you need. And yeah, there is a time to get shouted at and hollered at and corrected. But I think a lot of that sometimes can happen in the film room. It can happen in the team meeting room. It can happen in areas where, hey, it's us. It's the family. It's the collective. It doesn't have to be out on the practice field or on a sideline, right? So, it was a very special training camp. And I think, knock on wood, none of these injuries they've kind of weathered are going to end up being long-term throughout camp. And this team can be as healthy as possible going into week 1 against Detroit. But by and large, I felt like, especially as Matt LaFleur has kind of gotten the wind in his sails as a head coach and his process now going into his 7th camp in Green Bay, it was a very organized, business-like sort of operation. And it'll be interesting to see how it translates, once the lights come on. I think 2 things that will stick in my memory with regard to the 2025 training camp. One is the
impression that the rookie first-round draft pick Matthew Golden made. It's been a long time since I've seen a rookie draft pick, regardless of what round being selected in, that I've seen a rookie draft pick make the kind of impression in a relatively short amount of time that Matthew Golden has. The other that will stick in my mind is watching Brandon McManus dressed up as an official and just throwing kind of that lightheartedness into the final week of training camp. And the day after, the guys were out there practicing in the pouring rain. And McManus drills like 6 field goals in the pouring rain out there at Nitschke Field. Then on Tuesday, when it's not his day to kick and it's Mark McNamee's day to kick, McManus puts on the zebra uniform and is out there as a side judge throwing DPI flags in the one-on-ones with the receivers and DBs and sort of having those little hello moments with his teammates when they realize, like, oh, the guy who's out here officiating practice is one of our teammates, because that was all done without the locker room's knowledge. That's something. I've been here a long time. I've covered, this is my 20th training camp with Packers.com, and more than that if you go back to my newspaper days. I've never seen a team do anything like that during training camp, and I thought it was pretty good.
Great mic'd up video you can watch on Packers.com. I think Tyler Gajewski put that together for us. Really fun, lighthearted again, just seeing how players interact with them. Pretty good reaction from Romeo Doubs in that video too.
Yeah.
Once he realized it was McManus.
He realized it's McManus.
And then also watched his language when I think he realized that he was mic'd up as well. But I will mention this as well. When you think about these, I think one thing Matt LaFleur has done a tremendous job with is creating like these check marks and these checkpoints in the training camp schedule. Whether traditionally it was always family night. Every coach, there's always that family night practice. But then, you got joint practices now where you head out of town for a little bit. You have some camaraderie. You practice together. Packers definitely had their best joint practice away from Lambeau Field that I've seen during the LaFleur era.
I would agree with that.
You come back. Whether it's the McManus thing, at the end of the practice on Tuesday, they were doing various one-on-one drills in front of the team where they put a couple guys in the spotlight, had them show out a little bit. I feel like those are the type of things that you need, because I'll tell you what, man, once that 53 is set, once that preparation begins for Detroit, it is all systems go and it is all business. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, on our next show, and we may only be able to do one show next week after the decisions with the 53 are made, and we will we'll hopefully get a show recorded in order to discuss that. But that will definitely be the topic of discussion next week. Just how things are setting up, the decisions that are made, and then as you said, it's all systems go. Preparation all moves forward for week 1 with the Lions, and as we know, 2 games in 5 days at Lambeau Field against 2 teams that were in the playoffs last year. I mean, it's all going to be here before we know it, Wes.
Yeah, and think about it. There's so many times where even when we went back for training camp, I was sitting out there covering the shareholders meeting last month, and I'm like, it does feel like your season just ended, right? And it all flips over and the calendar resets, but there is something special. And how long did you hear me clamoring for the Packers to have a week 1 home opener under Matt LaFleur?
Yeah.
We're in year 7. It's finally happening.
And now they're getting 2 home games in 5 days right out of the gate.
Making up for lost time,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But, it's just that the excitement level hits different. I think it'll be a cool atmosphere on Saturday night. People seem to still enjoy the preseason games in Green Bay. I can't speak for other places in the continental U.S. With NFL teams. But, get through this and then get the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow our coverage of the conclusion of training camp with the final preseason game on Saturday against the Seattle Seahawks. We will have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you next time.